we kick off today's episode, a quick word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Ivory Tree Portraits. Let's talk about capturing memories that last a lifetime. Ivory Tree Portraits, a woman-led studio located in Wayne and Newtown, Pennsylvania, is all about making family photo sessions a breeze. With a unique kid-led approach, they specialize in maternity, newborn, and family portraits. Imagine a photo shoot where your kid led the way, ensuring a fun, fast, and fabulous experience that truly reflects their sparkling personalities. Busy families, it's time to create custom portraits with ease. Visit ivorytreeportraits.com to book your session today because every picture tells a story and yours should be magical. Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Selinsky, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today, we have an incredible guest who embodies courage, vulnerability, and the beauty of reinvention. Leah Higgins is a former lawyer turned full-time mom, writer, and content creator living in the heart of New York City. You may know her from her powerful articles on motherhood, miscarriage, mental health, and you may have seen her on TikTok. In this episode, Leah opens up about her journey from practicing law to embracing life as a mom, transitioning in her career, her decision to speak out about the challenges of miscarriage and motherhood, and what it's really like to raise kids in the hustle and bustle of New York City. Leah's honesty and wit will leave you feeling seen, inspired, and maybe even laughing out loud. So without further ado, let's welcome Leah. Welcome, Leah.
Hi, thank you.
Excited to have you. So to start each episode, we have our wine, and win of the week segment. This is where we share our favorite bottle of wine, vent about something that's been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So what is your WINE of the week?
WINE of the week is always a Barolo. I am a red wine girl. I love a nice Barbera or a Barolo. I am just Italian reds all the way.
Awesome. And we are in the middle of red season, so I love a good red. What is your WHINE of the week?
Norovirus. My whole family and everyone in New York kind of has gotten hit pretty hard with it. It's been tragic, like truly terrible. Everyone I talk to, especially if you have kids, have had norovirus and it's terrible.
We had it in like December. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's like you just feel so bad for them. And then like
Really?
my husband and I both had it. So it's like you don't want to invite anyone over to like take care of the kids because you don't want them to get it. It's just like a mess.
Totally. It's bad. Bad news.
Well, wishing you, quick healing for that.
Thank you.
So what is your win of the week?
I ran the half marathon on Sunday.
Oh, yes, I saw that. Congrats.
Thank you. It was huge. I am not a runner. I never thought I could run in my life, especially not after having 2 kids. I've had 2 knee surgeries and norovirus last week. So I was like, there's no way. But we did it, and it was actually a great experience. I really loved it.
That's amazing. A half marathon is so you are a runner. You are definitely a runner. That's great. Congratulations. What a great accomplishment. So I always like to ask my guests, what is one significant challenge you've successfully navigated shaping your journey to where you are today?
Gosh, can we narrow it like in terms of motherhood, professionally?
Let's do motherhood.
Motherhood. I think it really was my struggle with the newborn phase with my son. Now that I have 2 children, I can kind of compare my experiences, and both amazing, obsessed with both kids. But I would say my son definitely had colic, and I didn't know it when I was like in the thick of it. And it was really incredibly difficult for me, my husband, and we just thought it was normal that, the baby would be crying and spitting up all the time. And it was just really tough. And really, I would say the big win was getting through it together as a couple and coming out of that stronger and like more of a united front. And as a family. And still, I'm very open that I am not a newborn phase person. I'm not into it. I hate being nap trapped for hours. I like to be out and moving. I cannot sit still for that long. Like there's only so much Bravo I can binge watch, but I think really navigating the hardship of, struggling in the dead of New York winter with a newborn with colic and moving through that, going on mental health walks to make sure I was, keeping my body and my mind moving, especially I was struggling physically. So I think really navigating that was my challenge that I overcame.
And that is something that I feel as though when you have a second child, you could totally reflect back on the first one and be like, that was not normal. And I
No.
could totally relate with my daughter. She was November of 2020. So,
Oh,
COVID winter. And I definitely had like some sort of postpartum anxiety and I just thought like me not getting out of my bathroom for like 4 weeks was normal, but I'm like, how are all these moms just like walking around? I don't understand. And then with my son, he was a June baby. So we were like down
yeah.
the shore in like 2 weeks, we're like out and
Yeah.
about. I'm like, this is very different.
I definitely think that there's a difference between having a winter and a summer baby. If you live
Mhm.
somewhere that's seasonal, obviously, if you live in Miami, it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
if you live somewhere seasonal like we do, it's a lot easier in my experience to have a spring summer baby sometime when the weather is warm, because to be in the house for that long with a newborn can be really mentally challenging. I totally hear you with postpartum anxiety. Everything was a freak out. I think I must have taken my son to the pediatrician like 10 times in that first week at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
And then the darkness too, like the early darkness would be like 4:45 and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, now
yes.
it's dark. Like this is terrible."
I hear you. Trust me.
But we survived. Good. So the running wine mom, we talk a little fitness. What is your favorite way to stay active?
Well, now I'm really enjoying running, which was
Yes.
shocking. I also do a lot of bar classes and weightlifting. I walk a lot. Like I live in New York City. This is a very walkable place. So I think walking while listening to a podcast or some music is always a wonderful way to, just keep yourself in good shape. And like, I think it does a lot for mental health,
It
honestly.
does.
But
Yeah.
weightlifting, I love bar classes, and like I said, now I'm into running. Who knew? Who
Who
knew?
knew? So speaking of good for your mental health, what do you think the relationship between your own physical fitness routine and your mental health is?
Huge. Huge.
Yeah.
It's so important. On days where I don't work out every single day, but I would say probably at least 5 days a week. And I try to be at least somewhat active every day. But I think it is so underrated how important keeping yourself physically active is for your mental health. And I think that's part of the reason why women struggle so much in pregnancy and postpartum is because you are more restricted. I am one of those people that's like annoying in that I'm a huge believer in keeping yourself not as in shape as you always are when you're pregnant or whatever your norm is, but like keeping yourself active. I went to the gym, I kept up with my bar classes, whatever is safe as discussed with your doctor. Keep doing it. It will make you feel so much better and it will make your recovery so much easier. But I think that there's an enormous connection just in your clarity, your endorphins, the way you see the world. Things just kind of a cloud lifts when you're mentally in shape and physically in shape.
I totally agree with that. I was at a workout class the day before I had my son. Like I was the same way, and so many people are like, "Oh my gosh, like why are you working out so much?" And I just love to do it. But then I'm like, you go through this traumatic experience where you're going to have to really be like trying to survive physically and emotionally. And why wouldn't you want to be in like the best shape of your life
Yeah,
before you go through that? Like if you're
for
just sitting
sure.
around, for 9 months, then your recovery is going to be hard.
Yeah, I think so. I think your recovery is way easier if you kept like some semblance of your routine. And I think also I'm pretty convinced that the fact that I was in shape is what helped me like survive and get through my first delivery, which was terribly traumatic mentally
Ugh.
and physically. And I think that if I wasn't strong and hadn't been consistent in my workouts before, I really don't know what the impact would have been,
Mhm.
but I attribute the fact that I got through it, and I don't believe in bouncing back, but recovered as well and as quickly as I did to the fact that I had been in shape before and made it a priority to keep myself physically strong.
Right. That's amazing. So let's talk about parenthood. Tell us about your family.
So I have 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old. I guess he's gonna be 2 and a half kind of soon. I'm not ready
Oh,
to say that yet. He's,
I know.
almost a little over 2. And I have an almost 9-month-old, both totally delicious. My older one's a boy, younger one's a girl, and so everyone's like, "Are you done because you have
Yeah.
engaged?" I'm like, "I don't know." but I'm taking a break because I have to
Yeah.
get back. They're a year and a half apart.
That's the way my kids are too. And I will say, like, we're on the other side of 2 under 2. And it's really cool. Because at first people are like, oh my gosh, they're going to be besties. They're going to be playing all together. And I'm like, where is this happening? When is this going to start? It does happen. It just,
Waiting for it. But right
yeah.
now they kind of play together, and my daughter is starting to be more interactive and like can give back a bit more. They're kind of potato-esque for the first few
Yeah.
months, and now she giggles and smiles and she plays and she claps for my son when he does things, and they light up for each other. So hopefully
Yeah.
this will actually work
It
out.
will. And the boy girl thing, like, so many people are like, oh, having two brothers or having two sisters is so cool. And I'm like, no, the brother sister connection is so sweet. Like, they
Yeah.
just are so protective of each other, and it's
Yeah.
cool.
It's really sweet. I see it with my kids already. Even when I was pregnant with my daughter, she never kicked more than when she heard my son's voice.
Oh, I
She
love
was
that.
already just lit up for him, and it's still the case now. It's really, really sweet.
That's
And then we have a dog in the mix too. She's kind of had it. She's the older sister who's like, I'm done.
yeah.
It's like,
She's like, these kids.
she might as well be saying, like, stop stealing my clothes.
I love that. So, what do you think you were least prepared for in parenthood?
Think in the beginning, it was the sleep deprivation for sure. And then later on in parenthood, I would say it's the way that your goals changed. I didn't know that that was going to be such a real thing. People tell you, oh, your priorities change, your goals, but I didn't realize just how much things that I cared about immensely before I had kids just really felt like afterthoughts after I had
Hmm.
them. And it just wasn't my priority anymore. Not only because, they didn't matter to me as much, but also because they couldn't matter to me as much. I simply did not have time for them to matter.
So, what do you think your parenting style is?
Depends on the day. Generally, I would say that I can be pretty strict. I really believe in having boundaries. And my mother in law actually gave me the best piece of advice I've gotten, which is that when you say no, you have to mean no. Like, you really have to enforce it. So I try not to say no all the time, but when I do, I try to really hold to it. So my husband and I will look at each other before we really like say, you cannot do that anymore. And we're like, is this a hard no? Like, are we throwing food at the floor? Or are we throwing food across the table? Like, where are we at here?
Right.
If it's the latter, then it's probably a hard no. Like, it just depends. That's a silly example,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean.
No, I do. And it is because there's so many. That is one thing that I learned is don't say no too often. Like, don't say no, don't do that. No, because when you do say no, apparently it clicks more. I don't know if it does or
Yeah.
not, but I could totally relate.
Yeah.
So, what do you think one piece of advice you would give other parents is?
That's one of them. Definitely make sure that you're sticking to your nose. In terms of like family advice, another thing that my brother kind of taught me was that, you and your partner and your kids, you're the island. And if anyone wants to come onto the island, that's great, but they got to play by your rules. And I thought that was so great because it gives parents permission to create boundaries, which I think
Hmm.
is really important. There's a lot of overwhelm and overstimulation when you have children, especially when they're really young. And I think being able to maintain boundaries and, what, say, no, I'm good. And for lack of a better term, protect your peace. Like, there's value in that.
Right.
So giving parents permission to do that and say, it's okay for you to draw a line, whether that's with your own parents, with your friends, with other family members, whatever it is, with your job, like, you can say no to other people and protect your boundaries and say, if you want to enter my space, that's fine. But these are the rules we play by here.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like, even with my parents, when they ask me to do stuff still, I feel guilty about saying, like, no, I can't. I'm like, but you're right. You got to protect your peace. It's important.
Hmm.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about you. You're on a journey, you're practicing law and you're taking a step back and you are literally living my dream of transitioning to trying to figure out what you want to do because like you were saying with like your goals and your dreams really change when you have kids. You are kind of just reevaluating that right now. So can you kind of walk us through the moment that you decided like you're going to leave law behind for right now?
I honestly, I don't know that there was any one moment. I can tell you that there was a day shortly after I went back to work with after I went out on maternity leave with my daughter and I came back and like maybe a week or two in, there was a day where my daughter had to be hospitalized because she had croup. And so I had a follow-up appointment for her with the doctor. I had a deadline at work, so I was on my phone, emailing, trying to push back a call and ignoring the doctor who was asking me pretty important questions about my daughter's health, which is definitely the priority. And
Right.
kind of ignoring her. And then I ran home to hit the deadline. And then I had a nursery school tour for my son, which again, like you have to go to. So I ran out and I went to the tour, came back, and then I worked until like, I don't know, like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, maybe not. And I love practicing law. And I think that there were a lot of benefits. And I could 100% see myself going back even in the near future. But maybe not in that same capacity. I think it's just really hard to be everywhere you need and want to be for your family if you're expected to be on call so much. And that's just
Yeah.
kind of the nature of the job I was in. And that's no one's fault. It's just the name of the game.
Yeah. It's got to be so hard to have. I always admire everyone in because I teach high school health and phys ed. And honestly, that's perfect for parenting because you're like don't really have to bring anything home and you get summers off and all that. But I do always admire people in the corporate world, with I mean, I don't know how you balance anything really. Like it's crazy.
It's not everything every day. You
Right.
know, some things get left behind. You had a load of laundry to do. Yeah, no, like that's not
Yeah.
happening today. You had a meal you wanted to cook. Like maybe, hopefully, maybe you have a quiet day at work and that happens. Or, you know, you, I just think you're not 100 at anything at any given point. And
Right.
the only way to really be effective is to be okay with not doing everything well every day. So you can't be necessarily a gourmet chef, workout, be amazing at work and get everything done that you need to get done and show up for your kids at 100% at whatever recital or
Right.
bedtime routine, whatever it is that they have going on, something's got to give every single day. And you just have to be okay with making those sacrifices and figure out where you want to make them each day so that it's balanced across time. But there's no such thing as work life balance.
Right.
Not
It's
real.
impossible,
It's not.
truly.
Yeah, it's not real.
So, on your motherhood journey, you built an incredible platform on TikTok and Substack and Instagram as well. And you're so candid about motherhood and all of the things that you're doing now that you're in this transition period. So, what kind of inspired you to share your personal story so openly?
I think a large part of it was that I was frustrated that I wasn't finding the resources that I would have liked to have been given,
Hmm.
and that I wasn't seeing the stories that felt like mine. So, for example, when I had my miscarriage, I had what's called a chemical pregnancy, which is a really early miscarriage. I am arguably overeducated. Like I have a law degree and I had no idea what a chemical pregnancy was. They'd never heard of one. No one was talking about it. So I went on TikTok and started talking about it. I had a lot of trouble really honing in on what the best baby products to buy actually were. There were so many expensive baby
Yeah.
products, like shelling out cash here and this way and that way, and building my registry and so lost. And I just wanted someone to just be like, this is a waste of money and this is what so I just did it. I was like, here you go. This is what I wish somebody had told me. And the big one was with how to use a breast pump. I was in agony, totally engorged. And no one taught me how to use my pump. There are all these buttons on the machine. I'm like, what do I press? Why am I pressing them? No one told me.
Hmm.
So I created a pumping guide and schedules, and like I just put out the information that I wish someone else would do. And now it's been a little bit more fun. I didn't realize that anyone was going to be interested in my actual life. Once I realized that maybe people wanted to see more about like what I was doing on a day to day, things have become like a little more lifestyle focused as well, which is fun. But I think it's important to mix all of it in.
Yeah, and I saw that you had posted about the breast pump thing. I think I had responded to it saying, for my first, I had the Spectra, but my second, I had the, I think LV Stride, where it was like a hands-free pump. So I was like, I'm going to have two under two. I need a hands-free pump. So, but I'm like, I have no idea how to use it. I'm going to bring it to the hospital. And literally like the lactation consultant was like looking at it like, I don't know how to do this. I'm not really sure what you need to do with this. And I'm like, okay, so now what do I do?
That's how.
Yeah. So when you decided to leave law, a lot of moms, they really struggle with the guilt. There's still such a stay at home versus working mom versus you're in a different, position of just trying to figure out like what you want to do. Did you experience any mom guilt in this? Like, how do you work through it? Or did you just you were like, this is what I'm doing. I'm owning it.
I have mom guilt every day.
I know.
It doesn't matter. Truthfully, here's the other thing no one tells you. It does not matter what decision you make. You will have mom guilt for whatever reason it is. So when I was working, I had mom guilt for like the more obvious reasons, right? Like I really didn't see my kids as much, and I would have to ignore them to answer emails or whatever, or I just wouldn't be there in the same way. My son would be going to the zoo and say, Mommy, come.
Mm,
Mommy can't come. And that didn't feel great. Or if I didn't make it home for bedtime, which wasn't as often, I tended to come home before bedtime and work from home. What happened more was that like I'd be on a call or answering emails or in the middle of something important where I couldn't lose my train of thought. And my son would come in and want to play, and I would have to kind of close the door on him. And
yeah.
that was a
Ugh.
terrible feeling. I will say that the mom guilt I have now is more like figuring out how I show up for my kids on a day to day and also craft something for myself. Because I don't feel like I'm a stay at home mom. I am feeling like I'm in a transition period where I'm trying to figure out what a career looks like for me, where I can be more flexible, where I have the option to say, hey, when they're at school, that's when I answer my emails. And then when
Right.
they're home, I can go to the zoo. And that's the life that I'm trying to work towards right now. But it takes time and energy to build that out. And sometimes there's guilt in that, right? Like,
Right.
is
Yeah.
it okay? And then doing anything for yourself, God forbid, like a woman
I know.
goes, you know, take some time to get a manicure. It's like, that's terrible. I do that. And like, I have just squared away the idea that like I need to be able to take care of me, especially if it's in the gym or something. But I think there's always going to be guilt in choosing something that's not essential in like modern day American societal standards over your kids.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I loved about, I think you had a question and answer like the other week, and you were very honest about the time you have a full-time nanny that
Yeah.
supports you during this. And I just love that, I'm sure there's people that are like, oh gosh, she's like, got a nanny and she doesn't even
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But how for people who may have a little judgment of that, has having that extra help allowed you to really focus on both where you want to go in your career and being present as a mom?
I mean, so truthfully, I have not had my nanny for the last like 6 weeks. She just came
Okay.
back. And so from the time that I left my corporate job to now, she's maybe been here a week and a half
Hmm.
total, like on either end. So I don't know exactly yet, but I can tell you on the days that she's here, I feel a lot calmer. I feel a lot
Right.
better and a lot more able to focus. I think the overstimulation is really real and it can be overwhelming and it's difficult. And I'm here's what I would say to the people that have judgment about this. And I think this is important because I understand, like, this is a privilege, right? I'm acknowledging that 100% to be able to delegate and have paid for childcare. That is a privilege. And I'm grateful for it every single day of my life. One thing I will say is that in today's society, We do not have a village the way we used to have a village. We used to have friends, siblings, parents, grandparents who all came to help watch kids. This was never intended to be a one woman job, ever. It wasn't until I think the 60s that we started making it that way. And there started being these pressures to all of a sudden cook, clean, child rear, have them be the most like incredibly stimulated children with activities and this and that. This was never a thing. That was not the goal. There were never points in time where moms were expected to do this all by themselves until really recently. And I have incredible family. I have an amazing mom, amazing mother-in-law, their uncles around, and all sorts of people who absolutely adore and love my children, but they are not childcare full time. They come
Yeah.
and help out. Like I'm lucky that they babysit and they come so my husband and I can have a date night. When I ran the half marathon, my mother-in-law came. There are people who come and help out and love my kids, but that is not the same as having consistent childcare. It's just not. So I have to outsource my village.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I saw a TikTok with a girl who was getting a lot of hate for like having a nanny full time, and she explained it really similarly to you. Like, do you send your child to daycare? This is what you have to really survive. And especially if you have a working spouse, like you need the village if you don't have a parent or,
Mhm.
someone to be helping you. And the village is something that we're the same way. We're very lucky. My mother-in-law actually watches our kids, which is a huge blessing. And again, a privilege that we can just drop them off and, she loves, we know they're safe.
Yeah.
But the village has really gone away for most people, which is,
We just don't have that kind of mentality and
yeah.
support in the same way anymore. And that's for a whole host of reasons. And in some ways, I'm grateful, right? Because that means that women are taking opportunities that take them away from those sort of priorities. And it's great to have a balance. My brand of like feminism in today's world is the idea that you can choose. You
Hmm.
can have whatever seat in the boardroom that you want, or you can be home with your children if you want. You can do a combination. The idea is that you should be able to do what you want. Full opportunity should be available to you without judgment. But the reality is that that means that we're giving up some other ways of making that work. In practicality, we haven't fully ironed out the details of how to facilitate that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's great.
one of the ways to iron it out is through outsourcing.
Yeah, I agree. Outsource where you can.
Yeah.
It's the way that. So I kind of want to backtrack to you talking about your miscarriage, and one of the videos that I saw that you posted was about like, because people are so quiet about sharing their pregnancy until 12 weeks. And I totally also agree with what you were saying, like share it before 12 weeks. Like maybe not share it with the whole entire world, but
Mhm.
with your people because you need that support. And you wrote a really great article. It was incredibly powerful about your experience. So, why do you think there's still so much silence around this topic that is so common with women?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for starters, I think the idea is share if you want to share, right? Not everyone grieves in the same way. For some people, it
Hmm.
would be much harder if they had shared it even with a couple of people. That is why I tend to caveat with like share with the people who will be most supportive. And if you feel comfortable, do what I did and share with the world because it does help make women feel less alone.
Hmm.
When I had my chemical pregnancy, like I said, I had no idea what it was. And I felt so alone in the experience because I'd never heard a story of having had one. And then the more people I told, the more I heard this person had one, or oh, I have three friends that had this, or I had this. And then what ended up happening that was really beautiful is that when people had their own unfortunate experiences, which is not the beautiful part. I'm very sad that that happened, but they were able to come to me because they knew that I had had the experience myself and that I could understand and be receptive. And that's the sort of sense of community building that I think we need amongst women that has been silenced and kind of
Hmm.
cornered off from us. I think that women have been told that it's not that big a deal. This happens all the time and it's minimized, especially with something like a chemical pregnancy that's so early. And I'm the first one to say, I think that in many ways I was lucky that it was early. There's definitely a sliding scale of how agonizing that sort of trauma is, depending on when it happened, how it happened. I 100% hear that. But I think the idea that we're minimizing any sort of child loss,
Hmm.
probably not great for making people want to come forward. You don't exactly feel enticed to share your story if people are like, oh, well, it was early.
Right.
Like that
Like,
doesn't
okay.
do anything. We're like, okay, I'm still sad. Now what?
Right.
And I think there's also like a shame factor still, which is incredible that, well, why didn't my body perform the way it was supposed to? Isn't this what we're supposed to be doing? And then you don't hear enough people saying, no, like miscarriages are incredibly common. Your body didn't do anything wrong. It did actually probably what it was supposed to do, because maybe the child wouldn't have been able to function outside of the womb. So that was your body's way of managing that. It's just, I think that we're still in a place where it makes maybe, I think, men in large part uncomfortable to hear about a miscarriage. And
Right.
I think we're told that you need to just deal with it, because to deal with it publicly would mean making other people sad and uncomfortable. So you have to deal with it silently. And that's really the tragedy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the suffering alone is really, and especially with the chemical pregnancy, because like you said, there's a sliding, there is a sliding scale in
Totally.
many ways for it. And it's like you could be, diminishing your own thoughts of just saying, well, or telling yourself the same thing, like, I shouldn't be upset because at least it wasn't at 20 weeks or whatever. But you
Yeah.
still have every right to feel the way that you feel and
And you know
be
what?
open about it.
Totally. Even though I'm such an advocate for this, I still sometimes do that to myself. So I'm coming up on the 3-year anniversary of my miscarriage. And I still am like, well, why am I upset? Like, I have
Yeah.
2 beautiful kids now. And like, I think what I've come to is maybe that I'm sad that I was so sad and that I went through
Yeah.
that. I felt like I couldn't talk about it for so long.
Right.
But I think it's so many compounding emotions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's easy to minimize the experience.
So, how do you think that sharing it publicly really affected your healing process?
I mean, there were so many people who came forward and were like, me too. I had this experience and I had a different but similar experience. And so I think knowing for sure that I wasn't alone, being able, because you can Google it, right? And it'll
Right.
say, oh, like 50% of all conceptions are chemical pregnancies. And like, wow, that's a huge number. But like, I've
Yeah.
never put a face to that. So like, that doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean something. You want to connect with people like on a human level. You have to be able to have that personalized empathy. And
Hmm.
I think when I shared my story, so many people felt like they could share theirs. And so that sense of community, that strength, that empowerment for me to share and for other people to come forward, even if they were just telling me, that was enough. And I think that there was something in hearing thank you from people for being forward about this. I wish, of course, there were people who were like, you didn't lose a baby, like, rah, 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 like freaked out. That's fine. But there were enough people who were like, thank you. I'm really grateful that you shared this, that I was so glad I did, even though I was nervous about whatever the backlash was going to be.
Right. And for someone who's going through pregnancy loss, what words of encouragement or wisdom do you think that you would offer to them that you wish maybe someone had said to you?
You can't know what the outcome's going to be, right? You can't know. But I would say it's okay to grieve, and it's a loss, right? Even if it's like so early and it's more of the loss of the idea of the baby than the baby itself, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to ask for help, to ask for support. And it's also okay to move on. It's okay to keep trying, to want another baby, to want another baby quickly. And it's also okay to want to wait. Whatever you want to do in your next step to either deciding you want to try again for another child or not, it's okay. It's totally up to you and it's all valid. Whatever you're feeling is all valid. And that's kind of what I wish somebody had told me.
That's great advice. So, to kind of continue with your sharing as, your life as a content creator, what has been your favorite thing about connecting with other moms and creators online?
I mean, it's really a lot of fun. Joke, this is kind of like my version of online dating, because I married my high school sweetheart, so I never got on the apps. But now I like meet so many people online. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this see what it feels like when people like go meet like a new online friend for like a coffee or something. But I think it's really like finding out how much women have in common generally. Like the shared experience of motherhood and the funny stories. Like there's a reason like those reels go viral of like,
Right.
what is some relatable crazy thing a toddler did today. You're like, oh, that happened to me last week. The
Right.
experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, the funny, all of it. I think it's really nice to actually like put faces and names to these experiences and be able to talk to them about it. I also, not a ton of my friends have kids, especially not when I first had kids. So building this online community was a way of me having mom friends.
Right. Oh, I love that. So, what were your thoughts around the, well, like 12-hour TikTok ban? I don't know what's happening with it now, but for women who are making a living on this platform, there's so many that are, and it really was something that I didn't think about originally, but like how much it's taking away from these women who can stay at home and make a living for their family.
Oh, I think it's heartbreaking. I think it's really upsetting. Obviously, I have no idea what evidence the government has that, this is actually an infringement and a threat to national security. I don't know.
Hmm.
But I can see what the practical effects are for women who don't have childcare options and are able to monetize TikTok and still stay home with their kids. And this is like the dream, right? Like
Right.
that's balance is the dream. And the only reason people criticize creators and influencers, I think, and say it's not a real job or real work is because it's a female dominated industry. And
Yeah.
we're making it work in a way that other corporate fields just won't allow for.
Hmm.
We're building the flexible world that we need these days. And so the fact that this is all going to be taken away from women who really actually need it and benefit from it. And TikTok is very generous with how they
Hmm.
compensate creators. I am not part of a creator fund or anything like that. I have monetized through brand deals, but not through TikTok itself. But I see what it's done for other women. And I am 1,000% behind and supportive of those women. And I understand why this would be totally devastating for them, truly. Like, especially women who have not had traditional education or experiences that lend themselves to, typical corporate jobs. This has allowed them to make a name for themselves and be autonomous
Hmm.
and support their families. And we're going to take that away without finding some sort of substitute. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know it's great because, like, that is the dream of being like, you can just post your videos and around your kids' like nap times or whatever. And to have it all, it was like, I'm not even part of the creator fund either. And I'm like, this is like scary I feel so badly for everyone that this is affecting. Like, it's panic mode. This is your livelihood for your family, really.
It's
Yeah.
your livelihood. And it's like, that's, I think, until the world is like ready to come up with a substitute and like make traditional jobs more accommodating towards women,
Right.
and especially working moms, then
Hmm.
I don't know. Like, this is kind of a really great scenario for a lot of women right now. So,
Yeah.
what's great about it, meaning like actually having TikTok the ban would be really
Right.
upsetting.
Yeah. So while there's so many positive things about social media, it can really be a double-edged sword, especially for moms. We are constantly getting judged. How do you navigate setting boundaries while staying authentic?
Well, I don't talk about everything. I think it's
Hmm.
fascinating how entitled people feel to know everything about your life.
Hmm.
And I share a lot, like I'm pretty open. But, you don't need to know every single detail of everything that's going on. And I think that's when I have to know where to draw a line with that,
Hmm.
and I also am not willing to stick a camera in the middle of like a not so great situation.
Right.
Like, if my kid is really crying and throwing a temper tantrum, like if I already had my phone up and then the crying was sporadic, okay, maybe I'll capture that. But I don't know that I want to put that online. Like my instinct is to go comfort my child.
Right.
But people are just incredibly judgmental. I remember there was a point where I was showing myself like filling a bottle for my daughter with formula, and I use like a pretty standard formula, and people were like, "Oh my God, how could you feed her that?" I'm like, she's gonna be fine.
Right.
This is like a very normal thing, and if you actually read the ingredients on this formula versus like the crazy price one, like there's just not that big of a difference. Like
Yeah.
this is not a big deal, but people feel so emboldened to be critical and really mean. I'm trying to get better about not reading comments. Sometimes
Hmm.
I'm not very good at that and it does affect me. And other times I'm like, I don't care. So that's like a personal boundary I've been trying to be better about setting for myself. I
It's
do,
hard when people
yeah,
are like saying mean things of like a 6-second video that they have no idea what happened, like
for
the
sure.
other,
For
24
sure.
hours of the day.
I didn't
But
show you every part of my life. People got
right.
all up in arms when I was on maternity leave and I would show myself out and about during the day and they were like, "This isn't maternity leave." And I was like, "Well, I got to leave the house." And I didn't show you all
Yeah.
the hours that I was stuck on my couch watching Bravo reruns while I was nap trapped. So like, I don't know,
Right.
it would be a minute long video. I think you'd be pretty bored by the end of that.
Bored.
So, but people get really up in arms. It's pretty wild. I think that as long as I'm comfortable with the content that I'm putting out,
Hmm.
and maybe sometimes I put something and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have rethought that. But I think as long as I'm comfortable with what I'm putting out, then like whatever you're going to say is a you problem, not a me problem. But like, this is my life. This is my family. I don't do anything for the camera. We're not going on excursions just so I can like do it for the TikTok or whatever like
Right.
happening. My kids are not show monkeys. They're kids. If I catch a little clip of them, and I have started showing my kids less, just because they're getting older and like I don't want a camera in front of their face all the time. But if
Right.
they're doing something cute, sometimes I'll take a little clip and like I'll post it. But no one is performing anything for any sort of video. That's not happening. So that's a big boundary. And that's part of the reason why I'm kind of okay with putting it all out there. It just has
Yeah.
to be authentic.
Yeah, I agree. And so many people are not authentic with it. I don't know if you saw with TikTok, people were telling their story, their secrets. Did you see that
Yes.
trend? And
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh, these people are, none of this is real. And I aligned with you. I'm like, if I catch something and I post it, it's like, I'm not sitting there telling them to go do X, Y, and Z. It's just like they did it.
Yeah, exactly. None of that. I mean, yeah, that was a really funny trend that got kind of wild. Some of them like expected, and other ones you're like,
Right.
oh,
It's like, oh, okay. Like I
yeah,
loved I don't this the stay-at-home daughter. I don't know if you saw hers, like as she had a corporate job. I was like, good for
classic.
you. I
Yeah.
love that.
No, but that's again though. So it does have to be authentic, but two things can be true, right? Like she can still have this persona and generally like she's a stay-at-home daughter and still have
Right.
you know what I mean? That to me that didn't take anything away from who she was or make me think that she wasn't being real. Like just not obligated to share everything on the internet
Right.
or with anyone for that matter.
Yeah.
It's not. So for me, it didn't really change anything. So they were pretty entertaining though.
Yeah, they were. So looking ahead, what do you think is next for you, whether in motherhood, writing, any new dreams on the horizon? What's kind of lighting you up these days to keep you inspired?
The Substack is definitely keeping me inspired. I love to write. That's really kind of where
Mhm.
my passion lies. And I hope to do more published articles in the future this year. I love doing these podcasts. I think these are really fun. And I don't know, maybe I'll host my own one day. We'll see.
You should.
So we'll see about that. But right now, I'm really enjoying just like getting my footing for a second here.
Love that.
That's what I was missing in the last 2 months was that I was so freaked out about what was next that I didn't take a second to actually think about what I wanted to be next. And
Right.
so I am finally starting to take that time now.
I love that. Well, I think that is a great place to kind of wrap it up. So that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. What an amazing conversation with Leah. Her honesty and ability to share the realities of motherhood so openly are truly refreshing. From her decision to leave a demanding career to embrace the transition of motherhood and whatever else that brings for her. to her courage in talking about taboo topics in the motherhood realm. Leah reminds us that sharing our stories matter. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Yes. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can follow me on Instagram at @therunningwinemom_. And Leah, where can the listeners find you?
OneLitMama_ on Instagram, TikTok, and then you can also find me on Substack. It's Mom Talk by Leah Michelle Higgins. So definitely find me there.
Perfect. And I will link all that. So thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers. And I will be back next Tuesday.